Is there anything that you're looking at as a big key in this game that you think is important for the Bulldogs if they're going to be able to pull off the upset on Saturday?
Yeah, I think defense is going to be the big thing. I know the offense has struggled for Texas, but they have some key guys. Obviously, we know about Arch Manning. Um, he's looked not phenomenal, not great, but he's still looked like a really good quarterback that I think has a bright future in the NFL and everything. You got to obviously stop him and what he wants to do downfield. I I don't know, man. I think a key to the game is just going to be containing Arch Manning because even though he's had his mistakes, he's thrown 5 picks. He's got 13 sacks. Dude, he has 13 sacks and 12 passing touchdowns. The thing about Arch Manning is, though, he's still thrown for over 1,000 yards. He can rip the thing downfield and complete those certain passes that he needs to complete. Their lead receiver, Ryan Wingo. So really just containing the offense, but especially keeping Arch Manning on the bench, but also just put him on the ground. Like I said, he's taken 13 sacks. That offensive line has not impressed me. So I think if I had to sum it up and give you a key to the game, I think our defensive front for Mississippi State has to get after the quarterback.
I think that leads into one of my keys. So it plays in well that I think you can't let Texas get their run game going. And
Right.
this is a Texas team that, as you mentioned, there's been so many issues for them this year. The passing game sort of being the big thing overall. That one, Arch has not been nearly as sharp as he was expected to be coming into the year. He's had just a lot of those young player mistakes. There's times he is missing by a mile with wide open guys. There's times he's just not seeing it. Times where he's forcing the ball when he doesn't need to. It's not been a good campaign for Arch Manning here to start off in his first full year as a starter. Doesn't mean he was a bust. Doesn't mean he's not going to be able to live up to those expectations eventually, because he's certainly not being put in a position to succeed given the pieces around him. As you talked about, the offensive line is bad. They're very bad in pass protection, but they're also really bad when it comes to blocking the run. That has been an issue for them throughout the season. They don't have the superstars at receiver that I think they were hoping a few of these guys. You mentioned Ryan Wingo, and then you look at Parker Livingstone, DeAndre Moore. You have Jack Andrews at tight end, guys that I think they brought in and were expecting to be better players than they've been so far. It's not a situation where Arch can just sort of go out and play game manager and be in a good position to succeed. He's having a lot has been put on his shoulders, and you're kind of seeing why he wasn't fully ready for that spot. I say all that to say, even though they've not been good at run blocking, on the few situations where they have been able to block the run a little bit and get that part of their game going, that's been huge for their offense. Against Oklahoma, Quintravian Wisner and Arch Manning were both factors with their legs in that game, and that helped Texas a lot in getting their offense going. You go back to week one against Ohio State, I think you look at the 7 points on the scoreboard and think just horrific day for the Texas offense. It was – Texas more than doubled Ohio State in yardage, or I think they did. I mean, they had like 3 drives get deep into Ohio State territory, but they failed to convert on a 4th down. And if you look in that game, again, Quinn Wisner, Arch Manning, they were running the football effectively. And Wisner is going to be the lead guy for Texas in this game. So because of Texas's issues with the offensive line and when it comes to protection and with their receiving core and with Manning just not being all that sharp, Texas really has not been able to sit back and be a drop-back pass team and have a lot of success. They've kind of done it once this year in the second half against Florida, playing from behind. It was too little too late. And the only times they've really been able to stay ahead of the chains and stay consistent is if they've been able to get the run game going. Mississippi State's run defense is not great. They've had some issues with teams being able to run on them a little bit this year. They're not as bad as they were a season ago, but they've given up some rushing yards. So if you're State, you really have to take that away. Do not let Texas get that going. And I think that'll be a big thing. Did you have another key you wanted to hit on? Or
Yeah, I mean, just with the scoreboard, I mean, when you look at the losses, and I know it's only 2 for Texas, I want to kind of point something out here, but you look at the loss to Ohio State, not a bad team to lose to. 14-7, it was week 1, whatever, shake it off. They look good the next couple weeks. Um, But that loss to Florida, you had briefly mentioned it there, but you basically, I mean, you have to hold their offense a lot. And you're also not going to be able to score probably more than 28, 29 points like Florida did. This is a Texas defense that's going to give up touchdowns at times, but they're also going to hold you, play Texas Hold'em. And um, but you got to have an elite, like just solid defensive game to take out Arch Manning, and I think that's going to be a key for Mississippi State. I go to the back to the defensive side of the ball here. I like some of the guys that we've had step up. I really do. I like. Um, I, I mean, you could talk about Brian Lanier at safety, who has 3 interceptions. Believe he leads the team uh, for most by any player. We have 10 interceptions on the year defensively. That's really good. Turnovers are going to be a big key too. So you got to shut them down. You can't let Arch have a big day. But here's the thing, Andrew. Mississippi State's got the guys to do it. They got the Isaac Smiths. They got Jerron Manning. They got Nick Mitchell. I mentioned Brian Lanier, who has 3 interceptions. He's got 2 passes defended. A couple guys like him have at least 1 sack. So, you know, I don't know. What's your take on some of that I just kind of wrapped up on? Because, I mean, if you could just contain Arch, I mean, you basically take away their offense.
To an extent. I mean, look, Quinn Wisner has been a pretty consistent player for them. I don't think he's the most incredible player in the country, but he's been solid. They may get C.J. Baxter back in this game. Another running back who's been a good player for them in the past. Now, to be fair, he's been dealing with a lot of injuries over the past couple of years now, including this season, so he's probably not going to play a huge role. I don't think – I mentioned the receiving core. Those guys don't necessarily jump off the page. I do think – at their best, like Ryan Wingo can be, like he's that big body outside receiver. Like he can be a threat. So like I think he will challenge a Kelly Jones and a Diego Brumfield in this game. Arch has shown the ability to attack some downfield. It's
Right.
just they've not consistently been able to do it. And a lot of that comes back to their pass rush and or handling pass rush. That's the thing for State as well. They've got to be able to find pressure in this game than they've had in the other. Like This is kind of one of those games where you look at it and say, if Mississippi State's not getting pressure on Arch Manning in this game, they're just not getting pressure really against anyone the rest of the season. Which I go back to the game against Tennessee, and obviously a different style of offense and a much, much better offense. But Tennessee's offensive line has kind of quietly been a little bit up and down this year. And State, I think they only got Aguilar to the ground twice in that game, but they got a lot of pressure on him. And they were able to disrupt some of his throws. And that is something with Arch where if you get pressure and disrupt him, he can have some issues. So I think State does have to generate pressure. And if you do that, look, if you're able to get pressure and you're not letting Texas get the run game going with any sort of consistency, this will be a nail-biter type game. I do think that'll be the case. But those are the things that have to happen. Another big key for me, and this goes over to the offensive side of the ball, State's got to be able to finish drives in the end zone. So Texas defensively is probably going to play a bit of a bend, don't break style. One of the big keys there is that Michael Taff, who is one of their top defenders at safety, he's out for this game. So, and Florida kind of already showed, it's the only time it's really happened, but against Florida, the Gators attacked downfield against Texas. They were sort of the only team that's been able to do it this year because a lot of teams have not been able to protect it. But Florida hit some big passing plays down the field against the Longhorns. And so there is a deal where if you can protect a little bit and you have the talent at receiver, which we know Mississippi State does. Now, can Mississippi State protect? That's another story. But State's got receivers who can get deep. With Texas is a little bit susceptible there, and now we're talking about one of their best defenders in the secondary is out. Potentially, you've got the ability to attack downfield. But I think Texas is obviously going to be wary of that. And I could see them saying, we're going to play a lot more conservative in coverage. And if that means we play with a light box and give up some of the run game, that's fine. And that's kind of what Texas did a year ago. For those who watched Mississippi State, Texas last season, State ran the ball pretty well with its running backs. Devon Booth and really Johnny Daniels especially, like they had really good games on the ground against Texas. Part of that was because Texas was kind of letting them have it. But even though State ran the football pretty well in that game, they weren't able to turn drives into touchdowns. Twice they had to settle for field goals, including off of a blocked punt. They were in Texas territory and ended up having to settle for a field goal. Had a long drive go with a field goal. Opened the game up with a long drive, and they fail on a fourth down. And obviously you get the one touchdown drive there in like the fourth quarter. But State had several drives get near midfield, get into Texas territory, and just stall out. You can't do that in this game. If Texas is going to play bend, don't break, and say, look, we're not going to give up the quick strike plays. We're going to force you to have to drive the length of the field, which, given State's propensity to get in their own way and make mistakes that prove costly, making them have to run as many plays as possible to score is probably a smart thing to do. I think that's kind of a smart approach against State regardless. Don't give up the quick strike, even though Blake Shapen's been missing those quick strike plays down the field. Don't even give up the chance for them to hit those. Make them have to drive the length of the field. I think Texas is going to do a lot of that. If you're State, you've got to turn that into touchdowns. Now, that could be tough without Fluff Bothwell. He is questionable for this game. I think most are thinking it's probably going to be another week before we see him. But we'll see. If Bothwell's able to go, that helps you out quite a bit in being able to get that run game going. But the big thing for State when it comes to offense is like you've got to turn – if you're able to move the football, it has to get into the end zone. This can't be a case of, well, we drove down the field, but we had to kick a field goal. Or we drove down the field, but we went for it on fourth down. Crucial sack in a bad moment, turnover. That stuff can't happen.
No, I mean, like you said, man, you got to attack early too. Like, if you're going to have a drive that stalls out in a punt, maybe just go ahead and get it out the way. Because I feel like Texas has that defense that's just going to get better as the game goes along. But I don't know. Like, to your point, though, you need to be consistent on each drive, not with like, oh, pass, run, or anything weird like that. But points are going to be a big factor in this game. I know obviously we look at football and say, well, you got to score to win. Yeah, but when I say that, I'm talking Mississippi State has to hang with Texas's defense because even though it hasn't looked like it for Texas and Arch Manning, there's still a pretty solid unit that's going to find ways to score on Mississippi State. So I would just say that. But yeah.
Points are going to be at a premium in this game for sure. And that kind of gets into what my final key is. When you have an opportunity, and this builds off of the first point of like when you have a long drive, it's got to turn into a touchdown. When you have a chance to put points on the board and you're in a clear position, like you've got a shot open downfield, or you've got a run that has a chance to break big, you have to hit on it. That game against Florida, I don't think I've ever seen State miss so many chances at touchdowns where they had guys open and either Shapen didn't hit him or Shapen didn't see him. And it wasn't even just Shapen. There was also, a run on – it was like the second drive of the game where right after Shapen first missed Brennan Thompson for a should-have-been touchdown, State calls a run to Xavier Gayden. It is blocked up perfectly. And if Gayden sees the lane that is right in front of him, he has a chance to take that up the middle of the field and score. Instead, he tries to squeeze between a couple of offensive linemen, and it's a 2-yard gain. And, this is not me just saying it, after the fact, I know what's supposed to happen. No, Jeff Lebby said this at his press conference. We had a touchdown blocked up, and Gayden didn't see it. And that's one of those, okay, you kind of understand why he hasn't maybe seen the field as much. You might have to see the field in this game because we don't know if you're going to have Bothwell back. And I know it really turned into the Devon Booth show last week, and he can carry that load, but you can't only go with that one player. When you have an opportunity to put points on the board, whatever it may be, whether it means you've driven down the field and you're in the red zone, whether it means we've dialed up a shot and it is there, or we've called a run and we've got it blocked, whatever, you got to capitalize. because, as Christian was talking about, points are at a premium in this game. Texas's defense is too good to think that they're going to give you a lot of those opportunities. Florida's defense is also good, but Florida's defense, with all the injuries they had in the secondary, and I also just think their feeling in that game and the vibe around that program, State had plenty of chances to score against Florida and failed to do so. Texas, you're going to get a couple chances, realistically. You've got to convert. You've got to take advantage of those opportunities, and that's going to be the big thing for Mississippi State to be able to get the win.